everybody. If everybody would take a seat, we're going to get started, please. Everybody find a seat, please. We're going to get started. Last year we had this event at night, and we showed a video, and it was very easy to see. Unfortunately, you're going to be squinting to see this year's, because I think, thank God a little bit for the overcast day, because if it was a bright sunny day, it's really sometimes hard to see in here. But if you draw your attention to the screen, we'll get started. Thanks.
The Hall of Fame opens its doors to 4 WCWP greats. Steve Radoff, Harry Lowenthal, and Bill Mozer. Welcome to the 2013 WCWP Hall of Fame. Please welcome your host, WCWP DJ Jay Morali.
Thank you all for coming, and welcome to the second annual WCWP Hall of Fame ceremony, an afternoon where we honor WCWP's rich tradition. You know, since the day I first stepped into WCWP as a freshman, I really felt at home here. I was made welcome by station management, by other student staff, who really made me feel a part of this family here at WCWP. It doesn't matter if this is your first year with the station or if you've been here for the last 50 years. We as WCWPers are really one big, huge family. Dan Cox always says, once you're part of the station, you're a part of it for life. And it really is a true statement. This place is very special, and I don't believe there's any place quite like WCWP. Yes, it's a radio station. That we all know. And yes, it's been great hosting shows here and being music director here as well during my time as a student. But WCWP really is much more. It's a place where we've made friendships and where we've made lasting memories. I'm proud to be a member of this great station, and I'm glad to be part of this great big family here at WCWP. Our first honoree is the first woman to enter WCWP's Hall of Fame. Here to induct Bernie Bernard is someone you may hear from a little bit later. It's Bill Mozer.
Come on up, Bernie. I get it. Hook you up. Put it up here. All right. 4 years later, here we are, Bernie. Give me a hug. So Bernie started becoming interested in broadcasting at ripe old age of 12 years old. Something like that. Tell me about that.
12? Yeah, it was. I always knew that this is what I wanted to do. I listened to everybody on the radio from Dan Ingram to Cousin Bruce to Scott Muni. And the turning point, this is going to kind of date me a little bit, is when the Beatles first came to the US in 1964. The New York City DJs had every detail about everything, and we hung on every word with our little transistor radios and got busted in school for listening to it. It was amazing, and I said, wow, what a thing to do. That would be a neat thing to do, so that started it.
Did you do any work in high school?
No, we didn't have a radio station at West Islip High School.
But in 1968, you joined us over at WCWP.
I did. It was wonderful. And I chose host because of WCWP.
How did you hear about it?
Listened to it when I was in high school.
Who was on the air?
A guy who used to call the technical difficulty Dennis Stream.
Right.
That was his nickname because he was always screwing up on the air, but it was
So your days at WCWP, tell us about your career.
Oh, where to start? I was at WCWP, I did everything. Now, you wanted us to do everything. We had to learn how to run the board, do a show, do PR, do news, learn how to do interviews, be a rock jock, all of that stuff. And that prepared me for every single thing I've ever done in my career. Learning how to function in your job at WCWP.
In 1972, you went on to WBA.
I did, actually it was 73, I don't know what I did. That was through, again, an old
Elliot
man,
Goshman.
Elliot Goshman said, I'm giving my notice tomorrow at BAB. Get here with a tape because I'll tell the program director I'm leaving, but I got somebody. And he said, get there with a tape, analog, how point a tape. And he said, get here with this thing. And I did, and I got the job. So again, all my contact was so important.
And you did commercials there, and you did personal appearances, and you taught at the WBAB Columbia School of
Yeah, they had a
Broadcasting.
franchise at the Columbia School of Broadcasting there, and it was kind of fun. But a couple of things, well, WCWP prepared me to go on and help out the program director. He said, look, you did news at WCWP, right? He said, I gotta fire my news director because of that incident in the back parking lot in the car with the 16-year-old listener. So, and that was it. And he said, and he said, I gotta pull you off the air. I'm like, no. He said, yes, you're the only other person who can do news. Do news for a few weeks, and I promise you that I will reward you by giving you a full-time show, because I got to fire this other guy, because when Potkin, the FCC inspector, came around, the guy who was on the air was talking to me. He said, well, what would you do in case of an emergency? He said, hell, I put on a long record and get the heck out of here. So, you know, as you know. So he said, look, you're going to get this guy's show.
You worked with some interesting people at WBAB. What was the story where the IRS showed up at the front door and they went out the back window?
Oh yeah, the station owner was a little behind on some of the payments. The sheriff came, he wanted to repossess stuff, and she went out of her office window and ran around the back and drove off before the guys found her. She was on that.
Then you moved on to WCWP. Scott Muni hired you.
I did. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun. Scott, to be working with all these people that I listened to when I was growing up, and some who are no longer with us, like Scott So, and Allison Steele, who was always incredibly nice to me, and of course our friend Pete Fornatel, who's done stuff here so many times, but it was amazing. And Scott Muni, after, you know, he's the guy who was following around the Beatles in 1964. This guy hired me. Oh my God. So when I was music director there, I used to go into the studio once in a while and change the music. And, you know, Scott, his nickname was Scotch. He kept a bottle of Johnny Walker behind the album racks. And I would come in and he'd go, Burns, good to see you. You want to grab me with a jug? And he'd go, not a lot of people know where he kept his business. He goes, pour me 2 fingers. Oh, you got little fingers, pour me 3. That was Scott. I was filling in for someone do segues, the art of the segue. He said, he stuck his head, he goes, "Hey Burns, tight sakes get me hot."
Say that slowly.
That hurts my crown. Yeah, but he was wonderful. He was a father figure to all of us, and was just amazing.
And he did personal appearances for Delta.
Oh yeah, that was fun. A lot of clubs and concert halls.
And then he went on to the Voice of America.
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was 1984.
Tell us about that.
VOA was incredible. I got to do a whole bunch of things there. I got to be in situations that were amazing. I got to be backstage at the Grammy Awards, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions, Woodstock reunion concerts. There was one, the Woodstock '98 reunion concert. We had an ISBN line there, and I had a hot mic, and I had to do all of these live feeds throughout the weekend. My last one, the music was incredibly loud. What am I going to do? Here I am, going on the internet, 2 minutes, worldwide, with a hot mic. They plugged into this thing, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go. I did my last feed from inside a porta pot, because that was the quietest place in the world. It's like, you gotta find a place where you get the best audio and acoustics.
You also worked at WCWP down there.
I did. I worked there part-time when I was in D.C. when they were running Howard Stern. It was fun. It was fun. Just did some part-time there for a couple of years. And then things got really hectic at VOA. So
You were also on television.
yeah, I did some VOA TV stuff. Tracy and I were talking about this before. It was fun. It was experience, but I don't know. It was a little too neurotic for me. I like being on the radio rather than TV. It's a little more laid back. You can make all these facial expressions and wave your arms around. You don't have to watch it out, jumping out of frame, not letting your eyes flash too much. So, yeah, radio to me was always a little fun.
Well, one of your fortes was doing interviews.
Yes.
You had a number of people that
Oh, my goodness.
memorable interviews.
Right.
Elton John.
Elton John, that's when it was BAB. The record company had taken a hotel suite in the plaza. I got him sort of at the end of the day, and when I walked in, he was sitting on the floor drinking white wine. He said, "Oh, my next interview, how lovely." He holds up a glass. "Would you care to join me here on the floor?" Yeah, Elton John hands you a glass of wine, says, "Get on the floor and do the interview, put the machine between us." That's it. You don't argue. That was Paul Campbell from Jefferson Airplane.
You shared a joint with Paul.
Well, he says, "Hey, nice to meet you." What do you do? It's like, "Nice to meet you too." Now let's do the interview, which was a little weird.
We're a little tuned up for
Yeah,
radio.
it was good. It was very good. And I've met people like Philip Lynott from Thin Lizzy, who got to be a friend, and we would have a few Guinnesses once in a while, and he's gone, and met George Harrison. And one of the other ones was Bon Scott from AC/DC. We were talking way down in the basement of Madison Square Garden, drinking Jack Daniels and Coke, which I thought was totally foul. But then again, somebody offered, she was like, "Oh, okay, God knows more." And he said, "Would you like to see my tattoo?" So he drops trowel, and I'm like, "You don't see one of those very often, do you?"
Where was it? In front and back?
That was the front.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's like, okay.
you had your smartphone with you.
Oh, we didn't have smartphones back then. But it's in here forever. Forever.
Whoa! Hello, big boy.
Yeah.
And you interviewed, who else did you interview?
Gosh. Oh, Jerry Garcia,
George Harrison.
George Harrison, met him at a press reception. Who? Oh, John Nicholson, yeah. My friend Lisa, who used to work for the Who and is still friends with them. Thank you for all the primo tickets and press parties over the years.
No, thank you, Bernie. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So some wonderful interviews and people who are no longer with us. Luciano Pavarotti. Sometimes I didn't do the rock stuff. I did some other stuff. And I asked him some questions about rock music, and then it was just the two of us, and everybody else in the press conference was totally ignored because
Any other Beatles?
George Harrison, Paul McCartney at a press conference, and I think it was one of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions. So that was
Little sidebar. I had John and Yoko on WPLJ interview with Howard Smith. He had this crazy guard down the lobby. I picked up the phone in the FM studio. two guests are here, John Lemon and Coco. Okay, send Mr. Lemon and Coco up. And they sat God was clueless. They sat in front of me and chanted in stereo for about 25 minutes.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm sitting there going, when is this ever going to be over? It's just memorable.
Howard Smith, when you were at PLG, I came up and sat on the floor during Howard Smith's show. I sat on the side and watching the show.
Those were the good old days of radio, when you had LPs and
Yep.
people played what they felt like playing.
It was good.
One of the features of working at WCWP, we had these peace pipes. There was a stem of a regular pipe that had this little barrel. And I'll tell you, the FM days, you were really tuned up. And then Jimmy Fink came in with this nasty stuff called Ozium that's used in hospitals to cover up nasty odors. And you didn't smell anyone smoking grass in the studio, but you smelled the Ozium, and it was a tip-off. Management was in on this. It was, the glory days of FM radio. Who else have you interviewed that you want to tell us about?
The list is it just goes on and on. But one thing about VOA that I wanted to mention, it is incredible to be playing rock music to people listening in Eastern Europe. This was before the end of the Cold War, where people could get arrested and put in jail for listening to rock and roll. God, I would have been excited. It's amazing. And they would hide, and they would say, don't stop the music. Keep playing the music. It keeps us going. It gives us hope. And when Trans-Siberian Orchestra Sarajevo, Christmas Eve Sarajevo came out, we actually had people from Sarajevo saying, keep playing that song. God, it gives us, we're going to get through this. And I am convinced that it was a good old rock and roll power chord that put the first crack in the Berlin Wall. Because we had people over on the other side who risked their lives to listen, to send us mail and everything. It's like, that's why we do this stuff. It's like, oh my God.
What is the powerful medium?
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And you don't know how many people got arrested for listening to Bernie Bernardo.
Oh, gosh.
So here we are, 40 years later, and you're still over at News 12 doing conferences?
No, I was doing that for a while, but I had to stop. I mean, things got too demanding, and I got the stupid back injury. But I am doing a show a couple times a month in WCWP, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m., something called The Rock Show. Our alumni do that show every week. So
Ricky and Bobby G and Ellen.
There's Bobby.
Okay.
Oh, there's Bobby.
Who else?
Ellen, Scott,
Scott, of course.
Mike Riccio, Jamie Mazzo, Alana. Where's Alana? There's Alana.
Uh-oh. They're coming for you.
Didn't mention so much.
Here's the theater.
I feel like-
Catching up with me.
I feel like Ralph Edwards, and This Is Your Life, Bernie Bernardo.
I tell my students, so a bunch of them were sitting over there, I don't tell you about all these sordid tales just to say, look what I did. It's like, our business is still an adventure. You guys need to go out there and have these adventures and do this stuff. And for me, it's still a kick. I still love it. I can't imagine not doing this. Doing the shows at WCWP, I have a little home studio, thanks to Dan who built it for me. And so I can do a little voiceover work. Are we losing the room here?
No.
Oh, okay.
What was your wife?
Do we have a time limit?
No.
Oh, okay. It keeps going. That's it, and it's so cool to be, imparting some of this to my students and say, you can do anything you
Well, we
want.
grew up in an analog world, and now we're transitioning into a digital world, and that's what you're teaching over there.
It is, and you have to keep up with this stuff. I mean, I'm still holding fast to my PC, and Dan wants me to go to a Mac, but, some things come slower than others.
Thanks, Bernie. It's an honor to be here with you
Oh,
again.
you too.
You're a little puzzled.
Say what?
Yeah.
Well, you're still tangled, hold on. Don't move. Bernie, you're
Okay, I think we can disconnect you now. You hold that. I'll hold it. All right. Get tuned for Jason Moss.
Congratulations, Bernie. Before we introduce our next inductee, joining us again is a friend of WCWP who has made many stops in radio herself, including WBAB and WFAN in New York City. Please welcome Tracy Burgess.
Thank you so much, Jay. I appreciate it. And thank you to our friends at WCWP for including me in this event. Thank you, Alani. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. I'm going to be talking to Mr. Bruce Leonard. WCWP has an amazing relationship with its alumni. So, no, that's okay. We can stand. It's all good. It's all good. It's really kind of short. But Bruce and I actually have some overlapping friends. Because radio is so wonderfully incestuous. Everybody knows everybody, and that sort of a deal. And Bruce and I have been talking, and you just had a wonderful experience here at WCWP.
True. The most important thing is I went to high school with her husband. She's not mentioning that part. I just found that out. All the things that I wanted to say quickly, I can't even mention. After hearing Bill and Bernie talk, it just brought up so much inside me. I learned so much from Bernie, from Bill, from Harry, Steve. I never had the pleasure, but I know I would have there too. I have carried everything that I learned here to my work at WNBC Radio and NBC Television. Editing tape is something which people don't know how to do anymore. I was called on to edit a piece of tape because nobody knew how. There's things that you learn in this place.
People are actually taping the tape together.
Yeah. What do you mean played? That's pretty much what it is. Just to sum it up, a friend of mine at NBC, when I moved from radio to television, Joe Harnkamp knows him, Bob Sazer is one of the guys we work with. Bob told me when I left radio and I went to television that I left a career and I moved on to a job. It hurts, doesn't it? But it's absolutely true. When I retire, which hopefully isn't too far away, I'm going to get back in radio somehow. WCWP taught me a lot, and I really want to get back to that again. Thank you, everybody that I work with.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate that. Another alum of WCWP is Mr. Jeff Kroll, and Jeff is going to read some words. A gentleman who's not able to make it here this evening, and that is Joel. So, Jeff, may I give the microphone over to you?
Well, thank you, Tracy. The thing is, this is about mostly about Bill, and I see according to the program, Bill's not being inducted till later on. But we'll get this done. Joel Feldman was a member of our team back in the 70s, and now lives down in Florida. Was a very important part of our group at the time, and all through our years of the reunions that we started back in the late 70s. And Joel couldn't be here today, so he asked me to read the following to Bill. I want to offer my heartfelt congratulations on your induction into the WCWP Hall of Fame. It is a well-deserved honor bestowed upon a gentleman of high regard and good character. While I am unable to attend in person, I am indeed there in spirit along with my other close WCWP colleagues to honor and celebrate with you. Truth be told, Bill, I am well aware you were not always my biggest fan in the early years of our association. And aside, he was nicknamed Fudgy back in those days. That was the clean version. He was Fudgy Feldman. Now back to Joel's words. There were a few noteworthy incidents which I, deservedly so, incurred your displeasure, to say the least. One such incident was a sign-off to a just-completed Maximum Music Weekend air show that did not come off so well. The result of that on-air comment was an immediate suspension handed down and an almost instantaneous phone call. Feldman, you're out. 2 weeks. Click. I have no doubt there were a few other occasions that I have likely blocked out. As those faded into history, our personal association improved markedly, especially during the numerous years of the original old-timers and homecoming weekends. Through all of those years, through all the subsequent generations of kids who passed through the halls of the Abrams Communications Center, you were the binding tie, the one constant thread of continuity that connected all of us. Your wisdom and guidance and your demand for excellence, and most importantly, the atmosphere of professionalism that you insisted upon, became the signature of service at WCWP. It allowed many of us who were there with you, many that followed you, and many who celebrate with you today to enjoy successful careers in various aspects of the broadcast and telecommunications industries. We have to thank you for instilling in us those qualities that we still carry with us, and we are forever grateful. On a personal note, this is Joel's personal note, I consider myself privileged and blessed to be able to call you friend, and although we are separated by so many miles, I look forward to what will hopefully be regular visits to the Sunshine State now that you have a new grandchild in these parts. Again, congratulations and a hearty mazel tov to you and the fellow inductees, Bernie, Harry, and Steve. Enjoy your special day, and may you all continue to thrive in good health, success, and prosperity surrounded by your friends and loved ones. All my best wishes, Joel Feldman, WCWP Class of '74.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And with that, Jay, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And, a lot really goes into the on-air product here at WCWP. And it goes to big thanking of many people behind the scenes. They're really the key to our success here at WCWP. And to induct two of WCWP's pioneering engineers, we welcome a WCWP Hall of Famer, Hank Niemark.
Hi, everybody. Hello. It's just like Bill Mozer, right, to get inducted twice. Bill. Okay. And thanks for that great interview. Is it still daylight savings time? That's what I want to know. And I want to make mention of the video the tape editing. I myself found myself without any butter a few weeks ago. I dragged out the old churn, and it was really fantastic. No, I really know what you mean. Those lost arts are really something. I want to say how gratifying it is to be here. You know, I see the Benjamin Abrams Communication Center. I think of WCWP. To feel that something that you did so many years ago has such import that a half a century later, people are honoring you for it, is something that I can't really describe how gratifying that is. It was for me last year. When I come back here, it's really like I'm coming home. And it's really, really nice to feel that and understand that there's basically something monumental in the truest sense of the word that's here that I helped start. And along with that, talking about help starting, we've got Steve K. Radoff, who is and was the first chief engineer at WCWP. He goes all the way back. He's part of that route that started. How could we ever have understood back then, when we had the CW Post College Radio Club, that it was going to become this? And it's even doubly gratifying because of it. Back in the day, a radio station was basically a room with a microphone and a couple of turntables, and if you were lucky, a tape machine. And some stations had many rooms, but basically that's what it was, a room. Back in the day when WCWP started, real cutting edge technology was endless cartridge tape loops, I think. We didn't have turntables were cheap. They were easy to get. Microphones were relatively cheap. Audio consoles, Transmitters, even carrier current transmitters, where could you get that? Especially with the budget that we had, which was not very much more than zero. Seriously, that was basically it. So when Art Beltrone, who unfortunately isn't here today, when Art Beltrone just happened to find Stephen Radoff, basically when he asked Steve if he knew how to design an audio console for broadcasting and put together a radio station, maybe a carrier current transmitter, well, Steve, I guess, risk taker, said, sure, I can do that with no money. Steve was a friend of mine. Steve was a ham radio operator. We spent many, many hours in the basement of his family home in Westbury, was it, Steve? Westbury? He was a ham operator, and we would spend hours talking about very little to people in Caracas and Omaha. Do you still do that, Steve? He still does that. He's still a nerd. So am I. But we were a little too cool, I think, to be real nerds. But we were nerds nonetheless. But in that basement, there were drawers full of capacitors and potentiometers and diodes and there's solder. There was solder all over the place. If you didn't have treads on, you slipped on soldering. And the soldering irons were like chopsticks in Shanghai down there, a real nerd's basement. Well, so when Steve was asked if he could do this, well, I guess he ransacked his own basement full of that stuff just to get all the stuff together. And in those days, at CW Post, there was a riot of construction going on, and a lot of the floors were made up of those grids, the grid work with those like, what is it, 4x4 or 3x3 steel plates would cover up labyrinthine plumbing and cabling and so forth. And basically, Steve and I were walking through one of the buildings one day, and we just happened to pick up one of those plates. About a 1/4 inch thick, heavy. You needed one of those suction cup things to put them up, and that was our console. And one of my first jobs at WCWP when we got that was to take some steel wool and rough it up so we could paint it. Steve designed an audio console, which is about the size of this, using his stuff, and for nothing, put together an audio console for us. And again, for practically nothing, made an AM transmitter, a carrier current transmitter. And that was the beginnings of WCWP. That was the pioneering spirit that we had to do that. And that was basically for nothing. Well, if I say $100, the thing is that nothing is still nothing, no matter what the money becomes and what the exchange rate becomes. Nothing is still nothing. So the radio station that you all have today, that we have, that we grew up in, that we hold so dear to us, you can trace the thread of its existence back to those early days. And without the talents of people like Steve, who knows if we could have gone past that early day in the broom closet over at the stables back there. So it is entirely fitting that Stephen K. Radoff be inducted into the WCWP Hall of Fame. For 52 years, the station has weathered all kinds of trials. We know this. Always managed to keep going. It's because of people like Steve that we owe this endurance. And I'm pleased and honored to induct Steve into this class of members of WCWP Hall of Fame. Come on up, Steve. Got it?
Got it.
Okay, great. Steve, congratulations. You want to say a couple of words, or are you...
Everything that Hank had to say was true. With considerable humility, I thank you all. Maybe it's better here so you don't hear that.
No. Remember, microphone?
Microphone. You know, it's with considerable humility that you've all honored me as an inductee into the WCWP Hall of Fame. On October 18th, 1961, WCWP officially began broadcasting to the residents of CW Post College. This couldn't have happened without the dedicated efforts by the members of the WCWP team. So my role as chief engineer, which was well articulated by Hank, was the construction of the radio station. As Hank indicated, we had nothing except what I had in my basement, in my brains, and with the help of others. With the small stipend, and Hank again was correct, the stipend was $0, we put together a station consisting of a couple of high-quality turntables. Everybody know what a turntable is? You know, it's the thing that they spin those big black vinyl discs with? Well, considering the age of this group, you all know what vinyl discs are. And we even had a little money left over for a tape recorder. Ooh, what's a tape recorder? We got some speakers and one microphone. One good high-quality microphone. We connected all these things together, and I built, with help, the first panel. We put together a closed-circuit AM transmitter that we installed in the basement of one of the dorms. And we petitioned FCC for the call letters WCWP. So you wouldn't have WCWP today unless we had petitioned the FCC at that time. There were fits and starts to get this station going. One of the things we thought we were going to do is we were going to go to the quad. You know where that big flagpole is? We're going to take the bolts out, lean it over, put a wire at the end of it, and then push it back up. Thank goodness we couldn't get the bolts out. There was no way we were going to get that antenna, that flagpole back up. 52 years ago is when I was involved. I graduated from post-college. I continued my education at NYU and then moved on to Massachusetts, where I got my master's in Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Unlike what I hear from this group, I did not get involved with radios, radio stations, television stations, and interviewers. I became a nerd. I have to say that Art Beltrone and Henry, they deserve a considerable amount of praise for finding me after 52 years. I received a letter in the mail from Hank. I didn't know if it was a dawning letter or if it was a letter of appreciation, but I really thank you for finding me. I thank all you WCWP people. And all I can tell you is that back behind the language lab, I don't even know if it still exists anymore. We had one room, and the college put a partition in for us, and that was our radio station. And that's where we started from our humble beginnings. Thank you very much.
And you know, as if to continue, I have the honor to introduce the next inductee, who also was a chief engineer nerd, and also a cool nerd. You know, the creation of the FM station, you know, think about it today. We started WCWP in '61, and we had an FM station by '65. 4 years. Which seemed back then, I'm sure you know a lot of you will understand this, which seemed like eons. You know, but it was really no time at all. So it's, you know, quite a tribute to all the people who were involved. that we were able to move ahead so quickly. The creation of the FM station was really a daunting proposition. It was a physical plant to be built, myriad legalities, obtaining a license, stockpiling of a music library, acquisition of services like Associated Press, Western Union clocks back then. The contributions of Herb Costin, of course, are well documented. He was one of last year's inductees. We set our sights very, very high. We were pishers. You know, what did we know? But we still set our sights high. We had this sense of doing it right. And it wasn't playtime. And so when we did when we had the opportunity to do the FM station, the goal was to emulate the major radio stations in what was then and may still be the biggest market for radio broadcasting in the country. And you know, we had help. We did, of course, from people. What we ended up with was a radio station that was not only state-of-the-art for the time, beautifully rendered, the envy of every other college radio station. In those days, if you went to a college radio station, you know, there were alligator clips holding things, you know, wires all over the place, probably in somebody's old office or something. We had a radio station. And Harry is the guy who put it together. Yes, he had help, it's true, but Harry put it together. It wasn't plug and play. It wasn't a box of radio station kit that you put together. It took a lot of work, and it had to be done absolutely right. We all knew it. Harry knew it. Harry had physically had to take the bull by the horns, and it was Harry who did it. He gave us a radio station and gave us the foundation for what we have now. Of course, it was vacuum tubes in those days. Nonetheless, we had it. We did it. Thanks to Harry. Harry has to be a genius. I never saw him go to class. I never saw him write a paper. I'm sure he did. He graduated. But I was in that station 24 hours a day. Harry was there longer. With soldering iron in hand, you know, and capacitor in this hand, and, you know, trying to, you know, get everything together. Harry, it's with deep personal pleasure that for your contributions to WCWP, the abstract and the physical, that I hereby induct you into this class, 2013 class, the WCWP Hall of Fame. Come on up.
Over here, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I'd like to say a few words, as soon as I can find them. Thank you, Hank, by the way. I don't think I did all that, but it's okay. Okay. I'm honored to be among my fellow contemporaries inducted into the WCWP Hall of Fame. Before I go any further, I would like to give you a little bit of my background. I entered LIU Post engineering program in 1962 after working as a radio technician for a now defunct airline. If any of you watch South Park, you will know which airline it was from the credits at the end. Anybody guess?
Radoff.
Right. Okay. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to see the radio station, to see if the radio station needed anyone with a first-class FCC license. Unbeknownst to me, at the time, WCWP was planning to go to licensed FM from carrier current. So they welcomed me with open arms, and I was hooked from then on. To me, the radio station was more than just a place to learn broadcasting or meet new friends. It was a feeling of being part of something from the beginning. All of us working together for a common cause, working hard, but loving it. Perhaps equating the radio station to one of my favorite TV series, Star Trek, would put things more in perspective. Our faculty advisor, Dr. Costin, was our wise and all-knowing captain. And we were his fearless crew on a mission, going where no man or woman had gone before, seeking out new broadcasting realms. At least that's how I felt. Of course, not everything was all work and no play. One funny instance that I remember is when we decided to play a little joke on the night's newscaster. We pre-recorded the newscast, and while the newscaster thought he was live, we played the recording on air. In the middle of his newscast, one of the engineers crawled into the attic with a real dead chicken with a head tied to a string. At the appropriate time, the chicken was slowly lowered in front of his face. You can imagine the problem he had keeping his newscast together. Even more than the work, the fun, and the camaraderie, the station helped shape the rest of my life, as it did for many of us. This is where I literally grew up, made lifelong friends, and started my career. Up to this day, almost 50 years later, I'm still reminded of it. In fact, I'm reminded of it every day when I look at my still beautiful wife. I had returned to Post as a graduate student after a 3-year absence. I rejoined the radio station and got a position as an adjunct instructor, teaching broadcasting. Joan was one of my students. She was also a member of the radio station. As you can imagine, this eventually made things very interesting. And they still are. Once again, thank you for the honor.
These are some great stories, aren't they? The heart of WCWP is its station manager. Many memorable names have really sat in the chair of station manager here at WCWP. Please welcome our current station manager, Dan Cox.
I can't think of any way to follow what's already happened here today. I'm going to talk for a little while about the station as it is today, and then I get the extreme pleasure of working with Ted David via technology to induct Bill Mozer. WCWP is the place that you've all been talking about. You've stolen all my thunder. It's not a building, it's not technology, it's people. But unfortunately, the building has to have technology, so its people have things to do. We don't have reel-to-reel recorders anymore. We don't have those vinyl albums anymore. We don't have patch bays. Where's my patch bay friend in the back there? Bruce wanted a patch bay. You won't find them, and I'm inviting all of you to come to the station afterwards to take a look at the technology and the way things are. There are lots of computers. There's lots of technology. And unfortunately, these technologies are expensive. And unfortunately, we have the same budget you guys did. Many of our alumni have been extraordinarily generous And some of you are in the room, most of you are in the room here today, and I appreciate that, and thank you very much. I do invite you back to the station today to see what your donations have done for us in studio number 1. It's now designated 1. I think it was A when I was there. I think it was probably something else when we were all there, Studio 1. It's beautiful technology surrounded by terrific custom furniture, and I'd like you to come see it. It's not finished, as some of my disc jockeys will tell you. When's it going to be done, Dan? I'm tired of slumming in Studio 2. And yeah, that is slumming, fellas. I'm sorry. But from my perspective, an event like this is wonderful. As I stood with Jeff Kroll earlier today and said, you know, I have people who graduated in the aughts. I have people who graduated not in the 90s, Bill. We got to fix that, okay? We got to find those guys. That's right, Johnny, you graduated in the 90s. You have to understand, in the unique history of WCWP, 52 years, I've been there as director 11, and I'm only second to the man who was there 20. And unfortunately, during the 1990s, there were 5 different directors of broadcasting. I call it the lost decade. And anyone in this room who knows anyone who went to school and worked at WCWP during the 90s, please reach out to them. It's important that we grab them too. One of the great things about this gathering every year, and the one that we do in October at Homecoming, is to bring 50 years of incredible people together who have one common bond. And it's not the building, and it's not the technology. It's those call letters that ring in your ears. And whose idea was it to put that many W's in the call letters, Harry? And notice I say W, because if it said W, he'd stand up and go, Cox, you're suspended. W. There are 2 L's in that word, in that letter, 2 L's in that letter, right? So the station always needs your help. It always wants you to be around. We always want to be connected with you as best we can. So please stay in touch. Reach out to the others that you worked with at the station in the years that you were there and make sure they connect with us also. And come home. Because for at least 4 years of my life, and now for the last 11, it's my home, away from home. And to all of you here today, welcome home. I need somebody to operate the video here. I want to introduce someone who needs no introduction. And after he's finished, I'm going to continue the induction of Bill Mozer, the TD1. It was a lot easier when it was a 2-inch tape machine, right? The old 2-inch video tape machine. They were big, but they operated correctly. The unfortunate part of this is he's one of my students.
Greetings from South Florida. I was supposed to be there today, and in fact, when I found out that Bill was being inducted into the WCWP Hall of Fame, I made a specific note on my calendar, April 20th, make sure you are here. Here being New York, and as it turned out, because we bought a house down here, I needed to be here to take care of some things that were pertinent to the house. So we're using the mighty world of media to do here what I might have done up there. And thanks to Pete and to Dan Cox for making this possible. Look, what can I say about Bill Mozer, who I know for almost 45 years, who is the closest thing I, as an only child, have to a brother, and who was the very first person that I met when we walked through the doors of WCWP in 1968. I knew I wanted to transfer from the Brooklyn campus to LIU Post, and my father and I went in. My dad had never been in a radio station before, and there was Bill, who I guess was about 2 years older than me, and Bill was adorned even then in a professional manner, wearing a blazer, and conducted himself in a professional manner. I remember walking out and my father saying to me, "This place is professional, this is for you." Well, it turned out that it was for me, and so was Bill. And over the course of a number of years, you know, even when Bill clowned around, he was still professional about it. I'm sure we did the crank calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we did the WADO stuff with, you know, the heavy compression and the bass amplification. But every time we did something with Bill, it was goofy. We also learned something, because everything Bill did was always done professionally and done precisely. I became a pretty fair tape editor back in the days when using a razor blade and a grease pencil mattered. And I learned that from Bill, and I think it's a paradigm for Bill in general. Because of the precision needed in marking that tape from here to here and getting a click out, which Bill required when we did phoners, I think that is the paradigm for Mozer himself, which is excellence. And of course his company, Excellent Technology, says it all. There's nothing more important to Bill than excellence. If you call him on the phone on a Saturday morning, chances are he's going to rail about someone's incompetence, someone who didn't do it right, someone who got it wrong. But then again, how many times can you think of that Bill ever got anything wrong? I can't. Whether it was at WCWP, whether it was at WABC, where he managed to become the favorite engineer of the preeminent disc jockey in the world, Dan Ingram. That was Mozer. Wherever he worked, WTFM, at the fire department briefly, at Fox, at ABC, where the soap opera actors and actresses came to love him because he was so professional. Now at the Chew, wherever Bill goes, with him comes excellence. And I think that's the continuing theme here about Bill Mozer. I don't, as I say, have a brother, so he's the closest thing I have. And so from a professional point of view, from a personal point of view, I can honestly say that everybody and anybody who came in contact with Bill, who got a dose of Bill Mozer as a result of the radio station, came away from it a more professional broadcaster and a better person. Bill was a student of broadcasting, a student of excellence, and he made sure that he imparted that, and does to this day, on anyone who he comes across. So, Bill, I personally thank you, because I hold you responsible in the most positive way for a good portion of my success in this business. And to all of you, to Steve and to Harry and to Bernie, congratulations on your induction into the WCWP Hall of Fame. When Bill Mozer there, you're all in very, very good company. Congratulations.
I've rarely been speechless. This is not one of those occasions, but I did feel a little lump after Ted's tape. I have to talk about Bill Mozer for a few minutes. He may not like it, but I'm certainly have to do this. At last look, Bill has 1,247 friends on Facebook. 1,247. I have 6. You, Mark Snyder, and family. Because Tom Ruckert won't go on the internet. I want to talk about friends for a minute. Because I think my children, maybe your children, and the generations today don't understand what the word means. A friend is someone you can have a conversation with in which they will not judge you. That you can tell them anything you need to tell them, whether it's good or bad, and they accept you for how you are and what you are. To say to someone, you know, you really screwed me over there, and for them to respond, yeah, man, I'm sorry, or vice versa. Friends are people that you hold on tightly to till the day you die. Now, I don't have that many. I don't have 1,247. But I would argue that of those 1,247, every one of them knows Bill Mozer better than they do the 3,000 other people that they've come in contact with in their lives. Bill Mozer makes you a friend by taking your hand, looking you in the eye, and honestly asking you, how you doing? How you doing, Bill? I'm doing, which is one of his Mozerisms. Bill Mozer has had a huge impact on my life, along with 2 other gentlemen that I'm going to mention briefly. You know, when you're a kid, you grow up under the influences of your family. And when you become a young adolescent, you grow up with the influence of your friends, what you call friends, and then you graduate from high school, and that starts all over again. But there have been 3 people who've influenced my professional life, not my personal life, but my professional life pretty profoundly. One couldn't make it here today, wanted to be here. The other 2 are here. Mark Snyder, who I was happy to see come here today. And I came to CW Post in 1981, and we met a man named Bill Mozer, who I accidentally called Mr. Mozer, and he said, Mr. Mozer's my father, I'm Bill. All I could think of is, what an idiot. I drove home. I wasn't with Mark at that time. I was with my sister. We came to visit the station. I drove home with my sister going, who was that? And he was wearing those 70s running shorts that showed more than they should have. But I called Mark later that night, and I says, I know where we're going to school in September. And he goes, where? I said, CW what? I said, they got a radio station that really needs help. And we are so cocky, we're going to go in and help them. And we did. And Bill took us in and just gave us so much freedom to do what we wanted to do, to be who we were, and to understand that that's the kind of room people need to grow and to become better at what they do. I can only say that I try to live up to that, Bill, in my tenure. That I give people the opportunity to be themselves and do what they want. You taught me that, Bill. You also taught me that if I talk really nice to the waitress, ask her about her day, and be sincere about it, which I am, I get better food. That's the Bill Mozer I know. He taught me more about people than he did broadcasting. Yeah, he was tough. Say your W's right. Don't say F on the air, which he did one night when I was on the air. Just to prove to me that I shouldn't, he did it. But he taught me about people, that people need to be heard. They all have an opinion. They all have ideas. They all have stories to tell. And I know more about people today than I've ever known. And I think that's why I wanted to be who you were. As funny and creepy as that sounds. Because he doesn't remember it, but there was a day when I was a student where he looked across his desk at me after probably chewing me out for something. He says, what do you want to be in 20 years? I said, sitting in your chair.
And you did.
And I did. Because that is the admiration I had for this man, who taught me about friendship, who taught me that friends are important. And no matter how many years you may be absent from your friends, Mark being one of them, you can still reconnect and you can still remember all those things and still have those ideas in your head and remain the same person. And it's funny because one of the reconnections I made with Mark was because you saw him in a parking lot of a train station. And your connection to him and to me is amazing. Now the third person in this trifecta is a guy named Tom Ruckert, who I've known for 30 years. And the only reason I know Tom Ruckert is because he was doing radio with you as a high school teacher back in the early 80s. You know, those 1,247 people, the 60 some odd people in this room, and the thousands that know Bill Mozer have nothing on what's that Kevin Bacon thing, 6 degrees of separation? Most people I know are maybe 1 or 2 degrees of Bill Mozer. Because Bill Mozer knows how to make friends. He knows how to let people be who they are. He knows what friendship truly is. Here's a man who I would call him and I would tell him the problems I was having with my son, and he would spend the time on the phone with me and help me get through it. And we have similar issues as parents that we've shared together. And he's been a great friend to me for 30 years. I love you dearly, Bill.
Thank you.
And as far as I'm concerned, you're among the best friends I've ever had. Now, I'd like you to watch this.
Just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'm coming to see you again. Oh, baby, don't you know about winter, spring, summer, fall? Hey, now all you've got to do is call. Lord, I'll be there, yes I will. You've got a friend. You've got a friend, yeah. Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Oh yeah, yeah. got a friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, my friend and inductees for 2013, Bill Mozer.
Whoa.
Microphone. You know what those are.
Hello. Do you think Ted was making fun of my German heritage? Wow. For 20 years, I had the unique privilege of being the director of broadcasting for WCWP. And I can't begin to tell you what an awesome responsibility, but what a great time I had doing that. The ability to mentor so many people and share with them my passion for excellence and integrity and teamwork and an attitude. And it's just had an amazing experience there. And as I've said many times before, WCWP is not a radio station, it's a family. And for all the years that I started right out of high school working at the radio station up until now, seeing so many wonderful people and sharing Mozerisms on Facebook, thank you. Thank you so much for being here for me, and thank you so much for your friendship. Thank you.
Hey, Fred Gaudelli here with NBC Sports. Happy to be honoring Bill Mozer's induction to the WCWP Hall of Fame. Bill, I just hope I said those call letters correctly. But, you know, working in the sports business, there's always a debate, who's a Hall of Famer, what makes a Hall of Famer. The best definition I've ever heard of what makes a Hall of Famer is when you go back and you write the history of whatever it is you're debating, could you write the history of it without including that person? And when you talk about WCWP, without question, you could not write the history with the great contributions that Bill Mozer made. Really, the place stands on the back of Bill Mozer. So, Bill, I couldn't be happier for you. I wish I could be there. Congratulations on this most well-deserved honor.
My turn. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Dan. Before we say goodbye, we have a special presentation. And here for that is WCWP Alumni Association President Pete Bellotti.
Congratulations to the class of 2013. I couldn't be more honored to be here amongst my family. This is a family, second family. And for all the contributions you guys have done to this station, we are very humble and very honored to have you here and celebrate this day with you guys and ladies. Right now, I'd like to bring out, we have a plaque that will be proudly displayed in WCWP for all of the Hall of Famers. And I'd like to call the Hall of Famers up, Hank Niemark and our class up here. And this is the plaque that will be hanging up at WCWP and to honor you guys. So thank you very much.
I'm coming. Let's move it.
Get in there, Troy.
Can I hide this? No, I won't.
Memory, but it usually says in memory.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. For Tracy Burgess, I'm Jay Miraboli. And once again, let's hear it for the 2013 WCWP Hall of Fame class. Thank you.
We're going to open up the radio station. Feel free to come. Rouse around.
Congratulations.